Hi, John.
What's happening?
Hi, Tex.
Hello, Luke.
Whoa, what was that?
None of your business. That was not a slack. No one's slacking us. Nothing to worry about. I think that maybe now is a good time to have a record an episode of Power Athlete Radio. What do you guys think?
I think it'd be great. Let's do a power.
We're here.
Why don't we do episode 406 of Power Athlete Radio?
Huh. That's a good idea. Since when did you start showing up to these things? John Wellborn, friend of the podcast.
Yeah, well, you keep booking it on my calendar, and I keep trying to avoid it, but I never accept, but I still show up.
I mean, we record it. It's for listeners trying to get John out of bed by 10 o'clock to come to a podcast. Tex and I usually show up to the office around 4 a.m. 4 a.m. Tex.
Well, I sleep here.
What? You've been?
We have a shower.
Since when?
We have a shower.
Yeah.
And air conditioning.
Can I sleep here?
Yeah, I'll fix the loft. I'll put bunk beds in.
Got a pool, pond. Pond's good for you. Ladies and gentlemen, that's right. It's time. It's time to bring forth the rhythm of the rhyme. We have another crew episode of the premier podcast in strength and conditioning. Zero. That's right, people. We take these crew episodes to solve your problems because that's what we do. We're problem solvers. Would you concur, Tex?
I concur.
Now, we've also been known to create a few problems, but that's what makes life so fun.
Well, it's like you can't just always, go to a restaurant and eat. Sometimes you got to cook too. So you got to make the problems. You got to dissect them as well.
And listen, we are here to help. And that's why we have set up the Power Athlete Helpline.
It's a helpline? Oh, no, it's not. It's not a. Well, then TC will call us every day and have an emotional breakdown. He's like, "This is Fig from Newton."
He's already doing that. So that's why
it's a helpline. Tears?
Because that's why people are calling now. They just need a little. They need to pump a little air in their tires. That's what they need.
We're life bouncers.
Yeah, that's what we're doing. We're here to help. Hugs and love.
We're life bouncers we're bouncers at the strip club of life.
That's right.
You're there to have a good time. You might have a few drinks. We're going to bounce you out the door and send you home on your way.
And you get to enjoy the show as well. Right? Am I wrong? Do you concur?
I concur.
That's right, people. If you need help, call us 929-464-4640. We will come. We'll help you move your furniture. We can help you balance your books. What else do we do, John?
We make a really good steak.
That's right. We can grill up a steak for you. Maybe even overcook a turkey. I've done that multiple times.
Yeah, no,
we could do these things for you. Call us and let us know, or we'll answer your questions on training, health, nutrition, longevity, family, pets. We're getting to it. Cars, trucks, travel. I don't know. What do you want to know? What are you seeking advice on? We're here for you. 929-464-4640. Call us, text us, leave us a message. It's 929-ING.
0.
That's right. Today, we got to go to the hotline and Tex. I'm going to be asking you to just stall for me for a little bit while I find
right now
this. Yep. Yeah, stall right now.
I know we're not going to necessarily go into depth on Tim Wacker's question about what motor he should put in his F100 pickup. But as I was kind of ruminating on that, first of all, I respect going back in time and trying to relive your prior youth. But first of all, driving a Ford, bad idea.
Hang on. Is this like a lightning round?
No, I was just going to, while I was waiting for you, I was just going to drop Tim a little knowledge.
Well, why don't we just play Tim's voicemail and then you answer it in 5 minutes?
Okay, let's do it.
So continue to stall while I now find that.
Oh, okay.
All right, we'll wait on Tim Wacker.
All right, well.
Can you hum the theme to Jeopardy?
All right, here's Tim Wacker for a lightning round. Ready, John?
Yep.
Hey, Power Athlete, this is Tim Wacker. I got a truck question for you. I got a 1965 Ford F100 short bid that I bought last year because I bought one when I was 15 and had it for about 15 years, so this came available. And I bought it. It's got a 240 straight 6 that needs to be rebuilt. And so my options are to just rebuild the 240 straight 6, or I could, it's the same block and head as a 300, so I could just change the guts inside to a 300, which would be the same truck that I had in high school. Or I could, my coworkers are trying to convince me to put like a V8, like a 302 or something in there because there's more available performance parts and whatnot. Task for the truck is treat it like a truck. dump runs, daily driver to work when the weather's nicer, because I live up in Washington and it's only 2-wheel drive and whatnot. So what would you do? Would you just rebuild the 240? Rebuild the 240 to a 300, stroke it out a little bit, or drop in a V8 of some sort and for cruising and have to regear the rear end and stuff for that. But anyways, so just curious what you guys would do. Thanks, bye.
And then he follows up to let us know that it's all original. Nothing's been...
nothing's been played with.
Mm-hmm.
My recommendation is to yank the motor out, pull the transmission, pull the motor, and put in some form of small block V8. Personally, I would run a 351. I'm not a huge 302 fan, but if a 302 is readily available, they run a ton of Mustangs and they have cams and performance. You could do aluminum heads. I would pull the original drivetrain and put it on the side. If you ever wanted to sell the truck, you could sell it with the original, but I think you would have a lot more fun with the V8. I've driven straight sixes, and while they are pretty torquey, they don't get out of your way very fast. So for a fun car that you are going to drive and have a good time, it's a lot of fun to have some horsepower, and two, it's a lot of fun to bang gears. So try to find a 4-speed. I forget exactly what the top loader 4-speed is that would be for that truck, but I would try to find a 302 or even a 351 if you could find Windsor. And then that's a Ford 9-inch rear end, I believe, which would be a quick change, which would just be easy. It'd be a third member, so that's not very difficult.
So what is like the implications on the cost of the rebuilds or swaps? Like, is there a significant difference in what you're recommending here?
I don't know. I don't know what the parts on a Ford motor, because I tend to fucking avoid Fords like herpes on spring break. Mm-hmm. But I know that
avoid.
I do know that building Ford motors are dramatically more expensive because performance upgrades are not as readily available as GM stuff. Like in a perfect world, he could go throw a $750 5.3 LS in it, and that came to the transmission and get it in and be into it for like $1,500 and have something that puts out 300 plus horsepower. But to want to keep, like, I understand the nostalgia and keeping a Ford in a Ford. I'm doing the same thing with my 49 Mercury. But personally, I would yank that tired old straight six and the transmission. He didn't mention whether or not it's a manual or an automatic, but I would look for something like a top loader 4-speed, because it's a 2-wheel drive, which would be an easy deal. You wouldn't have to worry about 2 drive shafts, just one. I drop that in. And, you don't have turbos, you don't have any of that other stuff. It'd just be a simple process. I guarantee in 5 minutes, I could find motor mounts and a cross member and everything for the bolt-in parts. And then it's an easy swap on that Ford 9-inch. I just know that having a daily driver is a little bit different than like a weekend fun. And the one thing I've figured out with like weekend fun, having some horsepower and banging gears, it's really like the good time. Like I drive, and my Duramax has got an automatic, but like if I'm going out and I wanted to drive something on the weekend, I want to shift gears. Like I feel like a little bored cruising and not shifting gears.
Yeah. I still to this day. So how long have I been out of that 98?
Over a year.
And when I back out, there's times I go for the stick, and I swing and miss.
Well, on that fun time note, John, there's times that we've had a meeting or something downtown and then meet you here, and guess what? We're taking the Fall Guy truck, and I'm like, fuck yeah. And the way you hammer it, I'm holding on for dear life in there. It's fun.
Well, it has a roll bar. And it's a full cage deal. So even if we took a fucking tumble at 80 miles an hour, we're fine. And we got harnesses and PRP race seats.
Yeah.
So I built that thing to huck it.
Let's just pretend. Okay, so Tim, now you know what John's idea would be if you had to pick between the 3 that he gave you. I'm going to be. I don't know the difference between the platforms, to be honest with you. But of those 3 platforms, what would you do if that was your only 3 options? 240, 242, or 300.
Well, he said that originally, I think it was a 242, and then he could put a new head on it to make it a 300. Or the third option was put a 302 in it.
Oh, okay.
So the 302 is what came in the Broncos. I mean, dude, there are numerous, probably, I mean, we could go find a Ford 302 sitting around just about anywhere. Actually, I know where one is right now. It's at DJ's. But that would be a really, really easy conversion. And there's so many performance upgrades. You could put a cam in it. You could do aluminum heads. You could do some trick ignition stuff. I mean, there's harnesses. I mean, all of that stuff is readily available. So I would just, if it was me personally, and I had a 2-wheel drive short bed Ford truck 2-wheel, that I wanted to cruise and maybe chop a couple coil springs and lower it a little bit, I would want to have something that I could shift gears in.
Yeah.
So, but what's nice with that, because it's all original, you can pull the original drivetrain out, put it on the side like I did with my Shelby.
Right.
And then when I went to sell it, I just put the original drivetrain back in, sold it as an original. So not that he sounds like he wants to sell it. I mean, if it was the car he had in high school and now he has it later in life, he's probably imagining like, I want my kids to drive it.
Sure. But there's like what I'm coming frustratingly enough to appreciate is having an exit strategy on a vehicle, right? Like, so why not? Like, what's that going to take up? A little bit of space, And then if there is one day that, hopefully not, but there's a need to offload it, then the original parts are going to be
100%.
It's the same reason my old man never throws a box away.
Yeah.
So whenever he buys a firearm or anything that he might resell, if he buys it new, he keeps all the packaging mint, because there's those guys out there who will pay 20, 30, 40% premium over used market price if it's all original, right?
Yeah.
And in automobiles, I'd imagine certain automobiles, it's like, it's way beyond that.
It's really nice to go look at a car or maybe potentially buy a car, and the guy's like, hey, I put this motor in and I did this and this and this, but here's the original parts to turn it back to stock. So pretty interesting. Like, and this is just an observation on custom cars. So like, let's say you go to a place like Joe Martin, or you have Jesse James build you a car, West Coast Choppers, or the whole deal. And the bill comes in at $300,000. The ceiling for a custom car is about $150,000. Okay. So that's about the max anybody will pay, because anybody that's going to pay more is going to go build it themselves. So these guys that drop any of you guys that watched the Iron Resurrection show that I was on, the guy dropped like $250,000-$260,000 into that C10. Like, that car at best, even if it went to auction and at promenades and the whole deal, it's like 100 and maybe 125,000. Just because like that's the custom car market. Now, if cars are original, like if you have an original 1967 Shelby Mustang GT 500 number 41 or something, and in dark blue with a white stripe, like the one that Jim Morrison had with a saddle interior. Like if that thing's all original, there is no price tag for that car.
Right.
But if that same car doesn't have the original motor, and I don't care even if it's a bitchin' more cooler motor, if it doesn't have the original transmission and the VIN stamp isn't in the heads and all that, like it has a ceiling on Restomod. So what's nice, especially for a 2-wheel drive short bed half-ton truck is desirable these days. Having the original parts, somebody might show up and not even give a shit.
Right.
Or other people will show up and be like, oh man, this is nice to have.
Yeah. So insurance policy, right?
Yeah. It's always good. Like, on the truck that I'm working on, I got to go pick up the painted parts, but it was worth painting it back to the original color because the original color was so valuable. It's a dark Carmen red, which is like this dark burgundy with white, which is like super coveted. And when I saw the original SPID, which is the build sheet in the dash or in the glove compartment, I looked and I was like, oh fuck, man, this thing was dark Carmen red and white. Like that is for that truck, that's a really coveted color. So it was worth finding somebody to shoot some of the original parts because it was nice. So I think for like that type of stuff, when you try to sell things or if you have an idea on what you want to do, one, it's nice to have the original parts, but people will pay money for something that looks original stock, like it came off the showroom floor. If you updated the drivetrain, that's okay. But to have the original parts that you can be like, and if you ever wanted to turn it back to completely original, it's right there, which is really nice. So that's what I would recommend. I'd say pull out the original drivetrain, put it on the side, put in whatever you want, have something you can fucking bang gears and enjoy the shit out of it. And if you ever want to sell it, you have the original parts on the side.
I like it. I think that's a decent episode.
Why stop there?
You want to double up?
You want to do a second question? Let's do another.
Let's do another question.
We?
Here's one from Fig Newton.
Hey, crew. I was going to text this because it's probably going to be long, but I'm driving, so I can't. So, what are
not valuable.
What are some things that you guys used to believe that you now no longer believe?
Well, for number one, I used to credit TC as being a relatively intelligent individual.
Wait, you mean Fig from Newton?
Yes, I mean Fig from Newton. Continue the question, TC.
And what made you change your mind?
And what made you
it could be strength and conditioning related, or it could be life related. I don't really care. Bye.
Well, seeing as if you don't care, I don't care.
Well, then let's just shut it down, TC. No, I'm kidding. Thank you, TC, for our loyal listener and power athlete evangelist, former intern.
And, you know, home of the Fig Newton, which is weird is he sleeps on a bed of Fig Newtons.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So, ladies and gentlemen, TC's former intern. He does respond well to a little bit of tough love. Would you agree? Do you concur?
Yeah, when he came to us, he was a wad of cookie dough. And now
he's chiseled out of wet clay.
What's the line from Fight Club?
Carved out of wood.
That's it.
Might be chiseled. Is it carved?
It's carved out of wood. Which is funny. Like I'm always like carved out of wood. There's so many better being like poured out of concrete. Mm-hmm. Hammered into steel, but carved into wood.
You get what you get, ladies and gentlemen.
It's not pine.
So this is all of our jokes with TC are in
jest.
Yes, but great question because I think that is like every once in a while a inspirational meme or quote will float across Instagram that kind of resonates with me. And one that floated around, or maybe Harry Shaw sent it to me, is like, I'm going to butcher it, but something about like, if someone comes up to you and is like, man, you've changed. Like the response is kind of like, well, that's the point, right? Because over time, we learn things, evolve, move on, and bring on new beliefs, right? So that's what I think is pretty interesting here. And I know this has been asked previously, John, within the training paradigm, and it was years ago. One of the things was like the role of cardio in training a power athlete. That there was a period where it was like cardio is just a waste of time, but then in our training and experimentation, there's certainly a place for it for certain people, right?
Yeah,
and it's all.
I always thought cardio was just a way to burn calories to get you in caloric deficit. I didn't think it did anything outside of that function, but all of a sudden we did a bunch of stuff with aerobic base and realized that an efficient, high, big and broad aerobic base just puts everything up on a higher pedestal. So that was definitely something that I fought against and didn't believe in until I took the challenge and basically made a huge 180 on that one. So
with that said, what's coming to mind now with TC's question, big guy?
I got 3 of them. One, which is pretty interesting. I remember like the first time I'd really ever heard the term steroids was like when I was probably in like middle school or whatever. And actually the first one kind of plays into the second one. So we, in 1989, I went to a USC football game. It was against the University of Washington. And there was a guy named Steve Ettman who was like first round draft pick, like absolutely dominated this fucking deal. And I went with a buddy, or I went with my dad and like another guy that I played football with later on. And like I just remember we went and he was there, and I can't necessarily remember how the whole thing went, but we went. And I just remember like Ettman was out there. He was like a big, strong dude, and like the SC dudes were all fucking massive, and we're in the stands. And I just heard people being like, "Oh, those guys are all on steroids." Like I didn't know what steroids were, and I had seen like the Tony Mandarich cover. Like I don't know if you guys remember the Incredible Bulk. So like that was another big one, and I remember seeing the cover of Sports Illustrated, and we actually we got tickets to a Raiders game to go see Green Bay play because my brother wanted to go. Like we'd seen this Tony Mandarich, and we're like, dude, we got to go see this guy. He was like cover SI, like was a fucking beast. Pretty awful NFL player, but what kind of made me think a little bit about it was there was this kind of idea that like, there was something like Captain America, that you can magically take something that instantly makes you a player. You're just this mere mortal. All of a sudden they give you the, Avenger serum, and next thing you know, you're this, superhuman character. And I think that there was always this idea that, like there was muscles in a bottle that like, secretly you just take this stuff and you become this better version. And I think that's there's a lot of falsehood in that because it still requires a lot of hard work and whatnot. So it's just pretty interesting. Like whenever you see, and I'm sure you see it on Instagram or whatnot, these bodybuilders who obviously take drugs, but like people are so quick to be like, oh, it's all drugs. And you're like, well, just by saying that, you're discounting their hard work. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that they could have attained without it, but like you can't negate the work that they've done to get where they are.
Yeah, it doesn't displace the work, right? It just kind of like augments it a little bit.
And I'm sure there's a whole bunch of dudes out there that are taking drugs that you would look at that you never thought were taking drugs,
right. Yeah.
And they'd be embarrassed to say they were because one, they don't train hard, they haven't done it, or they think, oh, well, obviously I'm not taking as much as that person. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a pretty fascinating deal, and it's a really easy deal. Like Paul Carter is like, man, he's like the amount of people that like, I'll talk to about diet, like, well, you're on drugs, and he's like, dude, this is what I looked like before I ever took anything, and it's just pretty interesting that it's become this kind of catch-all for people to just assume that the reason that they haven't attained what they thought they could was because of just some Captain America stuff. So, but what kind of plays into that, and I remember, I just remember the people screaming like, oh, these guys are all on drugs and this. And then last night, ironically, Kyle Turley sends me a link to a new article that was in Sports Illustrated that went back and looked at the 89 USC linebacking crew. So there were 12 linebackers on the roster for USC that year in 1989. And ironically, man, we went to that Washington game, and I remember seeing those guys. Jeff Kopp, who's who's a power athlete, Block 1 coach, he knows all these guys. I mean, Kopp played, in that era. And 5 out of the 12 dudes are now dead. So what is it like?
Under 50, right?
Yeah, under 50. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I went through all these different tales, and you guys have heard me talk about my other welcome to the NFL moment was with playing against Junior Seau, and later on going to the Pro Bowl, and Junior basically being like, "You're hanging with me this week," and absolutely annihilated me for 4 days, and to see what he what did he play 19 years? To see what happened to him over the course of that 19 years was pretty disturbing. But reading all these accounts of these guys who, other than Junior, didn't really play in the NFL, didn't play, played in college. And then as I'm going through the article, they're blaming it on the painkillers, they're blaming it on the hits, they're blaming it on steroids, they're blaming it on the alcohol, they're blaming it on all this stuff. And, it's always been a pretty interesting observation that the game is a vicious game, and it's kind of interesting, at least for me it's somewhat surreal, is to read about this stuff and the trials and the tribulations, and remember these guys and remember them as players, and then to have guys I played with in the NFL. And what's crazy is
Junior's 20
he
years.
Played 20, yeah. So what's amazing is to have guys who didn't even make it to the NFL have these problems, and then play with other guys that played, maybe not as long as Junior, but didn't have the same issues. So it's always come down to what is it that pushes people? Is it a pre-existing condition through a personality? Is it genetic? Is it duration? Do people all process pain differently? Is it addictive personality? What it's like? Is it, antisocial behavior at an early age allows you to play football because of a kind of a reckless behavior? Is that it too? Is there a reckless behavior? Is it the concussions? What does it look like? And what's pretty interesting, when he was asking about things you believe and the things that you don't, when I came in the NFL, they told me that I would know when I got a concussion when I got knocked unconscious. Mm-hmm. So that was how they classified. So they asked you, have you ever had a concussion? I'm like, well, no. Actually one. I've been knocked out one time. I was still moving and playing. I just didn't remember anything. And they're like, well, you had one. So at the end of my NFL career, after year 10, they reclassified that. And I remember they went in and you're going through the exams and they ask you how many concussions you'd had. And I hadn't had anybody really ask me that question in a long time. And I was like, well, I've only been knocked out once. And they were like, well, we've reclassified concussions, where a concussion is any time you hit with your head or something happens, you hit your head, whatever it looks like, where you feel disoriented, you hear your bell rung, your eyes go cross-eyed, your vision is blurry, and you feel disoriented. And I was like, so that's how we're defining concussions now. Yeah. And the lady, and it wasn't a lady, but I think the doc was like, well, how many do you think you've had? And I'm like, 70,000?
Yeah.
I mean, so what, you figure 70 plays every Sunday over 100, over 100 plus games. So then you're looking at what, like 800 right there. And then you look at like practice and training camp. I mean, we were in double days. We went pads off in a rotation for 42 days. So I had hundreds of hits. I mean, thousands. I mean, like unimaginable amount of hits. And I cannot think of too many times when I didn't put my head into somebody where I didn't feel either a ringing disorientation or have to like shake your head to get your eyesight back. Mm-hmm. So why is it that certain people can have that level of damage done and not exhibit the same problems that these guys, and then that doesn't even factor in college, that these guys in college that didn't even get a chance to get 10 years in the NFL exhibited these problems and ended up, suicides and drinking themselves to death and all these other problems. So that's always kind of been the riddle of the Sphinx, and something I've talked to Inklid on for years. I think a lot of it goes back to diet, limiting inflammation, continue to train, not letting problems linger. So if there's something that you see in the blood work and kind of constant testing, and then also maybe it's just luck of the draw. Maybe there's durability, painkillers. I mean, all of these factors. But, Kyle forwarded me this, and, his comment was, cannabis saved my life. I would have been one of those guys. Mm-hmm. So Kyle found a way through the use of cannabis and through his company at NeuroXPF to really help himself transition. Because, man, 10 years ago, or not even, 10 years ago, man, I thought I was going to be reading about Kyle Turley's suicide in Sports Illustrated. And he was close. I mean, dude, he was on like every psychotropic drug you could imagine and quit them all cold turkey, went to California, found his strain, and has used cannabis and medical marijuana and has saved his life. So as I'm looking at these guys and I'm reading this thing, I'm thinking, how many players or how many guys that I played with or played against or, somewhere within this brotherhood, are dealing with these issues. And, but then I made the mistake of clicking on the Sports Illustrated Instagram and then reading the comments. And I think that's what was most hurtful, was to read how callous and fucked up people's comments were. Oh, these guys, what did they think they were going to get? They don't deserve it. They don't deserve any better. And I don't feel sorry for them. I hope they all fucking die. And I'm reading this stuff and I'm like, this is kind of the interesting thing, man. And we've been talking a little bit about this. I believe social media has created a rip in the fabric of humanity in a kind of an interesting way. So before social media or whatnot, you had a small circle of friends, you had your friends and family and the people around you, and they were your looking glass, they were your mirror. So how you viewed me, if I was being an asshole, you're like, dude, you're being an asshole. My family, you had this small circle of individuals where how I view myself is most important, but the people that know me the best and the people that I'm around every day, they should be the ones to, provide guardrails to be like, hey, you're fucking up. The problem we have now is we have people that are creating a false narrative, a false environment. I was thinking Nick Corona's girl taking 250 selfie pictures every morning when she woke up to find the perfect bedhead picture. Mm-hmm. So they're creating this.
Not his current girl.
Yeah, not his ex-girl. Yeah. So creating this,
in case for whatever reason it floats open.
Creating this false reality that you're putting out to the universe for admiration and approval of people that you've never met, don't know you, and have no influence on your life other than this median. Mm-hmm. And that's how people are judging their self-worth. Instead of saying, the circle around me of people being like, you're fucking up, you're doing bad, or you're doing great, whatever it is, no longer are people using their circle as reflection, because they have this external deal where they're putting out a fabricated reality to a bunch of fucking assholes that don't have any vested interest in you as an individual. Mm-hmm. So as I'm reading this thing, I'm I didn't want to comment, and I fucking just turned it off, but I was wanted to write something and be like, man, I hope I never grow as fucking bitter and callous and as awful as you are as a human being. You fucking need some self-searching. The fact that you even typed that, whether or not you thought it was funny or you were trolling or whatnot, the fact that even crossed your mind after reading the tales, how terrible this is. I mean, I don't care if they got to play for USC or whatnot, But like, these are individuals that had moms and dads and children and wives and this, whose fucking lives were destroyed. And the fact that you don't have any empathy or at least any compassion just goes to show how fucking awful social media is. Because is that the shit that people would say to that guy's mom, to his family? Be like, you know what? Your son died. I don't feel bad for him. He got to play at USC. He didn't think that something was going to happen. Fuck him. I hope, he got what he deserved. I
don't disagree with the sentiments, but I do disagree with putting social media on a pedestal as the cause. And I think what's interesting in that Dan Carlin thing you shot us over, which is not very related to what you're talking about here, John, but he described it as, we live in an analog system, right? Like our political system is analog. Our social structure is analog. And now it's being like overhauled to this digital environment, which is, reactive, broad, scalable, all these things that are analog values, like the Dunbar's number and the things that we've responded to psychologically and socially and probably biologically, like as a culture, like they don't talk, they're clearly not interfacing correctly. And that is an exact outcome that would indicate that. Like, there's a glitch in the system. People are like, it's not normal for people to act that way.
No,
right?
It's not.
In an analog environment, which would be like you're saying, like your community. If you were in a community where you're with individuals who contribute to the greater good of everybody, right? And let's say a tribe, no one in their right mind would say that regularly. Like maybe in the heated, like emotional debate where let's say you're drunk, like I'm trying to think of times where in your analog environment or your human environment, you've said something you regret, right? Like it's usually emotions are high, maybe there's booze involved, and you're like, fuck, that's kind of harsh. I should have said that, right? Yeah. But people don't think that way because the safety of this digital fabric.
Yeah, because like nobody's going to come through the phone and punch him in the face.
Right. So
and the problem is that because it's just output, there is no input. And like we don't, and then if you call somebody on something, well, you're an asshole. And then it's like, instantly, instead of being like,
yes,
there is no fucking Jay and Silent Bob that knock on the door and punch you in the face. So like it's
and while I'm not saying it's not a problem, I think it's more nuanced and complex than just social media. Right. Well, and I don't know who the bouncer is of social media. That's one of the problems, right? Like who's ultimately the lifeguard. Let's say we're land animals. We're not, and we've never learned, like we've never seen, it's like a fucking dog that's never been in water, right? Yeah. A dog that's never been in water. It's a land dog. And then you throw it in water. It's not safe out, you know what I mean? Or like humans who don't know how to swim, like McQuilkin. Well, but that's why you have lifeguards and a whole process to teach you like the best practices of being in the water and shit.
Well, and the problem though is that the people that should be most influential, right, are probably the most efficient, right? Like I've told you guys for years. Like I remember when you were, when Ashley got pregnant, I know I told you, I'm like, hey, believe me, dumber people, less successful people than you have raised Nobel laureates and presidents. Mm-hmm. And that's a kind of an interesting observation, but you start realizing how emotionally, mentally, and just like value bankrupt so many people are. And what's amazing is I think like for the most part, for normal human beings, like I would say people with alternate realities, whatnot, like have a harder time, but most people know what it means to be a good person. Mm-hmm. Right. Like, I mean, and it's, and we run into people that don't, and they blame it on everything from the way they were raised and here. But for the most part, like even those people, and I'll say, people that are really, fucked up on the spectrum, know what it means to be a good person and compassion. Like, somebody, hurts themselves, or, you see a car accident and somebody's bleeding, you get out, like instead of driving by and be like, well, fuck them for driving, mm-hmm. But that like level of callousness happens on social media every day, and people think it's okay. It's like, shit, man. Like if I see a car accident or I see a car stalled, I pull over and see if people need help. If the car's in traffic, I get out. I don't pull around and give them the finger. I get out and I push the car. Like there is a thing of like, see something, say something, and to be a better person. Like the age old, society will evolve when old men plant trees that they'll never sit under. You know, date trees take 60 to 80 years to fruit, but it doesn't mean people don't plant them.
Yeah, or benefit from
it. Just know that, you know what, the next generation is going to enjoy my labors today. And the problem is that there's no value in that in social media. Why? Because it just keeps on going. It's always what's current. There is no history. There is no value in that.
Mm-hmm. And again, there's also, I think there's shared, like we, and like using a broad brush. And if you're not, I mean, we're complicit in that issue. I'm saying as users of the tech, like tech, if you don't, like, it doesn't exist if you don't use it. You know what I mean? Like, so just by that very nature, we, not like necessarily us as individuals, but as a broad
but us
population.
Contributing, we are, like, I mean, for us having it, and, you know, and it's not all bad. Like, like the fact, like, that we're on this podcast and we're recording this and we're going to push this out over the internet and we're going to advertise it on social media and let people know, like, the power of that is amazing. And with great power comes great responsibility, which I
Spider-Man
stole from Spider-Man. But
they had to steal something.
But that idea, man, like that you can touch so many people in both a positive and a negative way, absolutely blows my mind.
And at scale and like unidirectionally, which is interesting. Like that's like the digital.
Well, and it's not like we record this podcast 50 times to find the perfect podcast. I mean, we're putting out like a first cut. This is the, our unbiased, unabridged, push out into the world from our first. It's not like, we're somehow manufacturing something that's untrue.
Mm-hmm. Well, and John, you were a professional athlete and you receive feedback in more than one way from your coaches, your teammates, and then the critics, right?
I would never read the paper and I would never, ever, ever watch TV.
And this is the point I'm getting at, in that you have this opportunity to put out in a positive sense of social media opportunity, your art, your words, your creation, what you're seeing and your vision, and you have the opportunity to then not listen to those that will negatively affect you. I understand that it comes in waves. The more followers and popularity you have, the more critics are going to find you and attack you and point your finger. But you still have the opportunity to listen to those that can provide constructive feedback. Sure. If you not read the comments or turn comments off, but then say John reaches out if I have some beautiful picture of a sunset from last night's lacrosse practice.
Where's the distance?
It was great. But then John texts me and can comment. I can take in that versus reading the hate that Luke Summers posts on my post.
But someone's got to be a bad guy.
To quote one of the, the poets of our time, Taylor Swift, people like to throw rocks at shiny things, from one of her songs, which I always appreciated that line, like the idea that people like to throw rocks at shiny things. Like I'm always amazed too, when people on social media ask for people's opinion. Like, hey, what do you, like, here's me, what do you think of me? And like, I'm like, fuck, man, like, I don't value, like, it's so hard to value the opinions of people that don't know you, that only get to see one lens.
So I think I have I'm just going to jump on because we can go along for this. And I think I have a segue for something in terms of like, not necessarily what I learned, like what I think now that I didn't know is, I guess, sure, it is. And it has, like, I don't remember where we heard this, and I know we've talked about it multiple times, but like, you're only the star of your movie.
Yeah.
Right? And like,
you're the villain in somebody else's movie, and you're the fucking extra.
Yeah, and like, even the person that's most important to you, whether it's your spouse or like your parents, like, you're not, like, you're supporting role. Yeah. Like, and that's not to necessarily have like a reductionist attitude on your value to other people. That's not the intent. It's more so to put into check, like, your impact, the impact you can have on others. And again, it's not meant to be a negative, but it can be a humbling thought. Is like, you're just a supporting role. On the flip side, though, the asshole that you run into at the market, who may be, putting on a tirade, or like whoever has frustrated you, like these strangers, they're the star of a movie. You know what I mean? Like they have their own life and their own supporting cast, and like you are nothing in that movie, and you have no clue what's going on in that plot line.
Have y'all seen Falling Down?
Yeah,
Michael Douglas.
It's been a while. I do want to rewatch that.
It's a great movie. I just want to go home.
And so like I just that put perspective on it, and in terms of like what that means with regards to kind of what we spun into here on the social media thing is like it's like the influence like that people perceive they maybe have or have been able to capture or garner through the platform, I think is again an unnatural way to cast a movie. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So where that comes into, I guess, in the framework and paradigm of this question is, what do you got?
Well, I can play off this theme as well. So
I was just going to say is like it just provides a new appreciation for like perhaps other people or how you want to position yourself with other folks, and perhaps Trim, who is not like a valid contributor, or things or individuals that are not contributing to your proverbial movie, right? Mm-hmm. And it was just an interesting way to kind of frame up life, the life that you're living and that others are, you know? So that was something that resonated with me. I can't remember where the fuck we heard that, or I did, but probably on social media.
Well, John has called you, like, you're everybody's Robin. All of your friends.
Oh.
You
Robin?
are the sidekick.
Excuse me?
That's what...
Robin?
I'm sure one of our listeners can find the episode.
I don't think I called him Robin.
Hell no.
Or the best man at everyone's wedding.
Supporting actor.
Yeah, no, that was.
But if there's a superhero sidekick, I'm not going with Robin. That is insulting.
Luke is the support, or what was it like the
Luke's lost gymnast?
God, no, it's the
best supporting actor.
I was like, Luke is the supporting actor in all of his friends' movie.
Yeah. I want to be, let's think of a sidekick. Like what's a buddy cop movie with a sidekick? Like I would be The Rock in Central Intelligence. All my buddies are Kevin Hart.
I was going to say more like Mark Wahlberg and the other guys.
I'll take that. But I think I'd be Will Ferrell. Who's the supporting role in that?
I thought
Marky Mark's the main character because he faces the conflict or they both face conflict.
They both face conflict.
Right.
Is it shared?
It's got, Eva Mendes. You're kind of like the Eva Mendes in that movie.
Well, take it.
They both face internal conflict, so it's difficult to decide who's the number one.
Well, what's weird is Tex is playing Dirty Mike in The Boys.
Mm-hmm. Soup kitchen.
Just over there and having a soup kitchen. We're talking about a bunch of hobos with their fingers in their butts.
Talking some, what is it?
Listen to some talk radio. Putting some D's and A's. Listen to talk radio. Putting some fingers in each other's poopers. God damn it! That movie is like, the best. I love that movie.
So Tex, then let me hand it off to you and where you're going.
Okay, and mine are interconnected. The first, I'll take you way back to college, and where hard work and believing that every rep provided you the opportunity to succeed, and me truly believing that, and then getting frustrated and mad at teammates that didn't share the same views. They were making more social choices in college than sleep, it's game day, or practice, whatever the hell, and they were enjoying their experience, realizing it was D3 and none of this matters. And me truly believing it's
the world.
I feel so sorry for you.
Oh, dude, 3-year captain, 4-year starter. And then went on to then coach for 3 years with that specific team. But that was the mindset, and getting frustrating and getting into legit fist fights in practice, in the locker room, for people that did not see my way. Mm-hmm. So it was a very frustrating point. And then I'm excited because next week we have Kristen Neff on to speak on the self-talk.
Are you looking back and wishing that you had more fun and maybe not have been so wrapped around the axle on this?
Yes. Yeah.
Me too.
And realizing, because our record reflected our skill level. Even with 2 All-Americans, we could never put it together against the competitive teams. And looking internally versus just realizing the social dynamic of, man, yes, it was a fun time, have lifelong friends because of it, but at the same time, all of them, if you ask them now, as much as we do love each other, they'll say the exact same thing, like, yeah, you tried too hard. But my coaches...
or there's an idea of like, I wish I had taken the time to enjoy it.
Yeah. But the coaches they were reinforcing my behavior because they wanted to win, and I appeared to be that hardworking, what's the form of leadership, like example?
Dork?
Lead from the front, but then it was my language that I was delivering towards the people was not as
you weren't
motivating,
constructive.
Oh, you were high school football coaching, dog cussing people instead of trying to build them up.
I was bringing Texas high school football into a East Coast private school boys sport, and that type of culture
doesn't exist.
Not exist. So I was misappropriating and applying a leadership style.
Yeah.
That was it's the only one I knew. Unfortunately, fell to level of my experience.
But
from
I still think like when I went to college, like we had a good time in college, but I think that there was always this feeling like of having to, do well in school and to do here, this, and like the idea of like, this is going to end. And if I always joke that if I had known I was going to play 10 years in the NFL, I probably would have just gone to like Arizona State and fucking raged and had a great time and a great college experience. But I still do enjoy the fact that I went to Berkeley, and I will never trade that for anything. But like my mindset wasn't like, hey, I just want to go to college to have a good time to get to the NFL. Like I never had the end, but I also wonder if I'd had that mindset, if I would have never gotten to the NFL. So it's just kind of an interesting piece.
It is interesting. It is difficult. And then this leads to my second one, which is in line with the same mindset. And it's that moment in my professional career where you realize like hard work and push and drive and grind, as we hear a lot of our strength coaches on the podcast say, that fails you. And then in sport, said principle, we know the harder you work, it's going to translate to the field, blah, 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 blah.
Can I soften some edges? Can I soften some edges on these things? Go ahead. Keep going.
Sure. But the moment that it doesn't work for you professionally,
right? What
had worked for you, well, my athletic career was more successful than it should have been looking at my abilities on paper. But then realizing that what allowed me to succeed athletically, and relatively professionally, nope, didn't work.
Might not, because here's the thing. I think it's all life cycle and appropriation and adaptability, and those are like blah blah. But so you do need like grind alone, right? As a soul, or just hard work alone as this sole lever that you're going to pull to thrive and scale and grow, I think does have a shelf life. And it's not an all or nothing either, right? So like, it's not that grinding doesn't work, but at some point it's just not going to be enough. There has to, then skill has to step in. You have to broaden perspective. You're going to have to change something. But no matter what you do, I still think the grind and the hard work is a catalyst. It just can't be the full cocktail. You know what I mean?
Right. But the problem of the internalization that I faced in college that still kept in that professional moment where you realize, and this was and I called John in a moment of frustration with the University of Texas internship and the Benny Wileys. So rather than getting frustrated downward at teammates and like assistant coaches and players, it was upwards towards leadership within that organization.
So here's the interesting kind of mess up in the paradigm. You're assuming that success results from hard work.
Yes, that was the assumption.
Well, but I can tell you, while we hope that's true, for the most part, when you start looking at outliers, especially like in professional sports and whatnot, it doesn't become the case. Like I've told you guys, I played with dudes that didn't lift weights, and they were still out there killing people. I played with dudes that weren't try hard guys, that didn't work, that didn't do this, that were so gifted athletically that they were able to somehow band-aid it to a high level. So I think there comes this like, and it's a Anglo-Saxon Christian value of like, and it's pretty interesting. I saw this discussion over COVID when like it had to do with like the Black Lives Matter and the deal was coming in. And I heard somebody say the paradigm based on this country, which is this idea of like hard work results in success, is this, white Anglo-Christian Saxon value of like, from the Puritans, and like they went through this whole thing, which I did not. I mean, I agree with them in terms of like that those are good values to have, whereas they were tinting them as bad values to have, that you shouldn't expect good things to happen because you work. And I remember thinking, well, that's a fucking awful way to raise people, or to, you should always, and whether or not it's a carrot or whatnot, but the idea of like, you get in what you put in. If you work hard, you will be successful. Now, is that true across the board? No, because some people just have greater advantages. Like if your dad's a billionaire, I'm pretty sure there's a good chance that you're going to have some money in your pocket too, unless, it's who's at Hearst, who basically left nothing to anybody. So I think the idea of like you get what you put in comes from kind of a weight room kind of situation where, we like to work with people that lift weights. I mean, we talk about performance training and doing this. The people that are attracted to something like Power Athlete and the training and all this are following within that same value space of, if I work hard, I will get what I want, whether it be physically, athletically, emotionally, whatever, that there is a receipt. There's a process for this stuff to happen. The problem is there's a lot of people that don't believe that. And we've seen outliers where it doesn't matter. There's people that are like, well, regardless of how hard I work, I'm never going to get ahead. So I'm just not going to do anything, which to me is an awful, awful existence, because we've seen it disproved time and time and time again. But that is something that's kind of permeating into our culture.
And with that, it's realizing the ebb and flow and the importance of where, like I had Benny Wiley and Mad Dog up top, and then I've since had conversations with them after, it's been 7 years, and them, one remembering me, the other not at all. So it's like, all right, just spent however many hours with you.
Mad Dog didn't remember you?
Irrelevant. Anyway,
it's because the only thing Mad Dog can remember is where his next meal is coming from.
Anyway, it's the realization professionally of playing the game versus finding the mentor, finding the people that will put you in a position and seek the best of you. So that was the moment of realization where this is just the way it is. No, I'm not going to accept the way this is. I'm going to find people. I'm going to find situations. I'm going to create opportunities where they want to take you with them to the next level or give you everything they have so that you can be more than them. There are types of people that exist out there versus just playing the game. That's how that's how it is fed and told within the strength and conditioning industry. And everyone that I talked to up until a moment of realization was saying one thing until you just look outside the paradigm and stop and find your own way within this organization, within the industry or whatever it is you're passionate for. So, and it's not getting frustrated and not turning it take a trip to negative town, which again, referencing, looking forward to our podcast with Neff to then deep dive the understanding of internalizing frustration versus speaking appropriately to one, yourself, and two, leadership, others, leading up, leading down, and the words you use that then put you in a position to everybody to succeed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm going to snag it and go more technical. And I think, John, that'll lead into your last one. My one thing that I've changed perspective on over the past couple of years is just pain and stiffness and like mobility in these things and blaming muscles, I guess. Like, oh, my glute's really tight. My hamstrings are tight. And we get these, and I know I've changed perspective on this because we get this frequently in like our emails. Hey, my hamstrings are really tight. I can't do a dead bug. Well, maybe And one thing that Xanis, our Block 1 coach, and kind of like a leader in the PT cohort of our group of
kind of a shaman
physical
of
therapists. One thing he said to me in working with him over the past few months is muscles are dumb. Like muscles don't get sore and muscles don't get tight. Like it's not the muscle's fault. It's the nervous system. Yeah. And the role that the nervous system has on pain and stiffness. And like just a case in point is whatever's going on, I got some foot and whatever Xanis has talked about in previous foot episodes, like my patterning for spiraling in knee flexion, hip flexion I have some compensation pattern that like overloads the glute, and Aunt Lo would call it tight assitis. But like my glutes can get so fucking tight that it feels like, oh, I just need to roll these out to loosen them up.
I've been telling you for years you're a tight ass.
Hey, John, we're in a safe space. But so what do you do?
Right, Tex? It makes
you
sense.
guys don't say that. Do you? Is it behind my back?
The stick is tightly firm up his ass. Yeah.
Hockey stick, or like I always wonder what kind of stick is up an ass. Is it
like maybe like a 3-inch diameter, like a big, like kind of like more like
something pretty small?
Yeah.
A log.
Yeah. No resistance.
But an example of this was at the symposium. I was on my feet. I had just bought new shoes, and they were not broken in and on my feet for 18 hours.
Yeah.
And like but
they were ballet shoes. So
they cute, John.
They did. They have bows.
But my fucking glutes were on fire and my back I'm like, I need to stretch out, and I'm rolling, I'm using the thump thing. I'm like doing the pigeon stretch. And then Aunt Lo he's just like, do a couple squats like this. And it like instantly loosened up. Like I'm talking instantly, 20 seconds later, 2 reps later, everything was gone. It was back to normal. And then standing again, guess what happened? Lit up again. Same thing with Xanis on some of his stuff. If you follow him on Rooted in Movement, like doing certain type of single leg unilateral, like deep squats, everything just loosens up. I didn't roll it out. I didn't stretch it, but range of motion is instantly changed. Dana Santos also has that information with like baseball players and tight shoulders. Do some breathing, everything loosens up. So you calm the nervous system, you improve range of motion. You didn't stretch, you didn't even touch the muscles. It's just calming down that CNS. So that was a big shift, paradigm shift for me in thinking like, you got to roll things out, massage things, chiropractic, which all these things can help, but it's not because they're doing anything to the muscle. Yeah. It's because they're interfering with the nervous system. And sure. I know Adrian Lowe was on episodes and episodes ago when he was talking about this, but it just didn't quite understand it until I experienced it.
Well, I mean, that's, Craig Bueller's deal, like muscle inhibition based on the nervous system, and then basically clearing the block and, like allowing the nervous system to reach. I mean, I just talked to Tom Incledon, and he's got a guy that does like a similar deal to Bueller, but instead of like muscles, he uses like the cranium as like kind of a roadmap. And so, I mean, there's a lot of interesting pieces where people are kind of attacking this from different ways, but I think it all goes back to, the central nervous system, which very well might be part of the thing that we're running into with like the, this concussion deal.
And on that too, with pain and that type of suffering is like what also RPR Cal Dietz and JL talking about, like the emotional and psychological components that have nothing to do with like using your body, but just the stresses of life.
That's that
can
Douglas Heel
exacerbate. Exacerbate pain, stiffness, tightness. It's so like, man, the complexities of pain, I guess, is like, it's not as simple as people will make it out to be.
The problem is pain is relative. Like what's painful to you might not be painful to another person. Something that is unbearable to you doesn't fit within their compensation pattern, or maybe it's something that goes down. Like it's pretty amazing. Like somebody could have the exact same knee injury and need to get their knee replaced, and other people are fine.
Yeah, like the Copers.
Yeah, like so then you have Copers and this. It's pretty amazing. And what I appreciate is when practitioners, like whether it be an Aunt Lo, a Bueller, or a Xanis, like I just have a whole bunch of tools in the toolbox, and I'm going to keep throwing and using them. We're going to try this and this and this until they find what works. What I get nervous is when people are like, oh, this is exactly it.
Yep.
Which is like when you go see the orthopedist.
And here's how it works.
Oh, your knee hurts? Well, I'm just going to replace. Like, it's like, yo, man, like, it's much more complicated than replacing a motor in a truck. It's a lot more complicated than just rotating the tires. You're talking about like a highly, complex system that has a whole bunch of things that we pretty much didn't exist. I mean, go look at the research on fascia. It doesn't exist 10 years ago. And now they're realizing that like when you strip away the skin and you see the fascia, like the way the body is connected, it looks like 7 different kind of quadrants areas. So we are learning at a higher rate. And I think it's because people are attacking this thing from different ways and they're all kind of working towards the center.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that was it. And I guess one thing that I'll share is remember when we went to that thing for the D10 and Lanny Napier spoke?
Yeah.
Remember that dude? I don't know. Maybe this will help somebody out there if they hear it. Is like, so this dude's like a pretty successful entrepreneur, has now stood up this like VC thing. And like he pulled back the curtains. He's like, I'm going to let you know that most of the successful companies I invest in, they have no clue what they're doing. Like no one has no clue what they're doing. So like if you're a young, struggling entrepreneur, gym owner, and you're looking at like a neighboring business or other successful businesses, like they don't know what they're doing. Everybody has that sensation. That feeling is totally normal. And I guess up until that point, you look at kind of exemplars and paragons of industry or like people who are out there kind of spreading life lessons and here's how I did it. Like they feel that way too regularly. And there's something like you just realize you're just in the company of other people doing cool things. So that was something that changed my perspective a little bit.
Nice.
But and then you got creatine, John?
Yeah. To go against what Fig from Newton said, I have not changed my stance on creatine since I started taking it in 1990. And even though we've had people be like, oh, it causes hamstring pulls and this and all the other stuff, the research is supporting today what I said when I was 14 years old. And I'm going to take creatine for the rest of my life. And I've been, I believe, the longest creatine user. 5 grams in the morning, or 5 milligrams. Is that the way it works? Like 1 teaspoon. 1 teaspoon in the morning, 1 teaspoon at night. Don't overtake it. I did that once. But I really think that maybe like it's a cumulative effect. As I was reading through this concussion thing, like I would love to be able to go and do the forensic and being like, okay, like when was the first hit? How much did they drink? Like what drugs were they given? What did their food look like? How are they, like all of these factors? Because I think if you can start tying together like, commonalities, you can start eliminating things and you can start kind of pushing this down and figuring out why some people come out the meat grinder fine and other people come out with a fucking, trying to brush their teeth with a 45. But yeah, creatine, have not changed my stance. 1990, I'm still on that one, Fig.
So when you were in high school sports, like what was the stance on creatine?
I just remember a lot of the drops, but my Katie Taylor high school football, we just jumped straight to steroids. But my class never got on that train. So,
but
I can't imagine high school kids.
So I remember. So we had steroids talks and like from our AD every year, and there was like, I was afraid to sniff beer in high school. So there was no way. I was straight and narrow, as straight as you.
That stuff's expensive. Like, where's a kid gonna get that fucking money,
dude? I don't know. But
I definitely told the story of where seniors sold a kid in my class peanut oil. And he injected it into his ass for however long until like he had fucking serious problems.
But my point being, irrespective of the steroids thing, creatine was like on the ban list from our coaches.
Yeah, it was
as if it were steroids.
Yep.
In the Midwest.
Yeah.
I remember that it was very, very controversial. I totally forgot that until a buddy of mine reminded me. I forgot that era existed.
Yeah. That was around the Mark McGuire time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah. Don't you remember? I'm taking androstenedione, and he had it in his locker. He wasn't taking androstenedione. He's taking handfuls of Dianabol. So it's the age old, like, I'm not going to admit to this, but I'm going to admit to this. Which, it's kind of like I had a dude hit me up. He's a fucking douchebag. I'm not going to name his name, but told me that he messed up his hormones because he was taking androstenedione. And so because of that, he had to start taking steroids to get things back. And I was like, I was like, first of all, you've qualified yourself as a moron for over a decade that I've been involved with you, so much so that I blocked them in everything because I can't stand the virtue signaling and the moronic nature of these individuals.
That'll happen. Anything else, Tex? Do you have any other ones?
Oh, time constraint. Fig, call again and we'll
tear
deep
you up.
dive some other questions.
Yeah.
How to fix your AC in your car.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's another episode. This one is a bit above what we were expecting. Regardless, we're here to inform and share and help. So call the helpline if you need help. 929-464-4640. 929-ing-ing.
0.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for listening. We love you. Leave us a review. Bye.
Now it's time for you to empower your performance. Head to powerathletehq.com/training to choose from a number of programs to meet your specific performance goals. And if you like to break a mental sweat too, visit academy.powerathletehq.com and become a real stakeholder in you or your athlete's success. Until next time, bye!